So in this segment, shouts out John McDonnell for sharing this story. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about the excessive profits being made at children's homes from private contractors. So councils have called for financial oversight of England's privately run children's care homes after research showed some of the biggest private equity owned providers were equally making hundreds of millions of pounds a year in profits. So, the Local Government Association, LGA, and that's an acronym that keeps popping up in this article, also warned that the increasing indebtedness of some of the largest private providers risks triggering a Southern Cross style financial crisis, potentially leaving vulnerable children at home. So providers should not be making excessive profit from providing placements for children, said Judith Blake, chair of the LGA's Children and Young People's Board. What matters most is the children feel safe, loved, supported in placements that best suit their needs. And so, what you can see that's happening here is a lot more. There are a lot more of these private, care homes, and the councils are becoming more and more reliant on them to look after children, and they charge, they're charging a lot of money to councils in order to look after the children, therefore making a lot of money per child. So, providers should not be making excess profit from providing placements to children, said Judith Blake, chair of the LGA's Children and Young People's Board. What matters most is that children feel safe. Oh, I just mentioned that. The call for increased regulation comes amid concern about the sustainability of the increased privatized children's care market. I mean, like, how has looking after children in care become, a business and a market? It's ridiculous. As well as the quality of some of the care provisions highlighted by revelations that thousands of youngsters were placed in unregulated accommodation, such as boats and caravans. Like, how have the government and councils let it come to this? Like, how are you not checking where these kids are going to stay, and why are you not continually checking up on these kids? A study published on Friday by the LGA found that the six biggest private children's care providers made £219 million profit in profits last year. That's off the taxpayer's dime. And what's worse than that is some of these providers recorded profits of more than 20% of income. So, I think that means that 20% of the money the money that they put in for care homes or charging whatever, they're making about 20% profit off their investment, which is a really good return. It said while four of the seven largest provider groups had debt and liability levels that exceeded their assets. So here, what you can see is these businesses, these private care providers, what they're doing is making a ton of money and having a ton of liability. So when the bubble bursts, as John McDonnell points out, when the bubble bursts, what's going to happen is these companies are going to fade out. Right, they're going to probably set up as something new, and these children will be left without care, all the money being taken. So, children's care provisions is increasingly dominated by private providers. Nearly 3 in 4 children's homes and 2 in 5 fostering households are provided by private firms or charities, the LGA said. The failure of Southern Cross's adult residential care home chain in 2011, in part because of its inability to pay heavy loans taken out to finance rapid expansion plans, led to many of its thousands of elderly and vulnerable residents having to be rehoused. And so, what happened here is this company were going, taking out loans for rapid expansion, but because they couldn't pay back those loans, they went bankrupt, and a lot of the elderly people that were there had to be rehoused. And you can imagine how stressful that is for people who are old and who some of these people have, mental illnesses like dementia. In the aftermath of its collapse, regulators were given oversight powers to monitor the financial health of England's biggest private care providers to ensure that adult care home markets remained stable. No such oversight exists for children's care homes, so this is a disaster waiting to happen. Blake said the largest providers of children's placements are growing rapidly and continuing to acquire other providers. The potential risks involved in their considerable debt levels is an issue that the government must consider alongside greater financial support for children's services. And here you have another issue, which is that the government have cut massive amounts of council funding, which also meant that councils in turn cut children's funding. To protect vulnerable children, because I'll tell you why these councils did it, because children don't vote, and so by cutting the funding going to children, it's not going to affect them when it comes to the electorate. One of my lecturers said, I forgot his name now, slipped my mind, that the people who have their rights abused most are children, and so you can see it. I'm really annoyed I forgot my lecturer's name, to be honest. Here this is a situation waiting to happen here when it comes to any of these big care homes, that one of them is going to go bankrupt, or someone's going to get a bit greedy and take too much money out, bankrupt, and boom, you have a load of children that are in care who don't have a place to live. So we cannot risk a Southern Cross or Four Seasons situation in children's social care. Stability for children in care is paramount if we are able to help them thrive. An oversight scheme is needed to help catch providers before they fall and ensure company changes don't risk the quality of provision. Peter Saniford, Chief Executive of the Independent Children's Homes Association, said there is no evidence that any large children's care providers were close to collapse. But we've just covered that a minute ago, that some of these care homes, their liabilities overweigh their assets. See, it says here, some providers recorded profits of more than 20% of income, it said, while 4 of the 7 largest groups had debt and liability levels that exceeded their assets. So if things go wrong, they will not be able to pay off the debts they have. So this guy here is talking absolute drivel. Peter Saniford, talking absolute drivel. And he's lying. 4 of the 5 children's homes run by the large private providers were rated good or outstanding by Ofsted, which is great. What about the other one? What about the other care homes there? Was it not rated as good or outstanding? Was it rated as average? Was it rated as poor? Why have you, this is a lie by omission. The LGA report demonstrates that there is a continued growth, not just acquisition in the sector, which we know is needed. The only reason it's needed is because the government won't help these councils actually fund their own care homes properly. Therefore, they're going to the private sector, which are overcharging them dramatically, to the point where these care home providers, are making excessive amounts of profit. As council authorities do not appear to have the ability to meet this need, then the private and voluntary sector must continue and will necessarily grow to meet the needs of children requiring a home. And so this is a failure of the government and councils, but more on the government. The LGA called for the chair of the government's recently announced review of children's social care, Josh McAllister, to examine the working of the children's care market in this year-long inquiry, which starts in March. So, that's covered in this article here, if you wish to read that. And he talks about how, the government have given him the ability to look into whatever he needs to. But the thing is, these sorts of inquiries, take forever and often don't result in much because the government just ignore them. So he said the LGA report demonstrates that there will continue growth, blah, blah, blah. As local authorities, we've said that bit. Kathy Evans, Chief Executive of Children's England, which represents children's charities, said the largest private care providers make £219 million in profit last year, while the councils responsible for children's care struggle to even balance their books. That's how chronically unsustainable this market is. And there'll be a point where some of these care homes, what they'll do is they'll charge lower amounts for looking after kids, but then what they'll do is they just have absolutely crappy conditions to the point where children won't get the support and the care that they need. So this is a disaster waiting to happen. Also, the fact is, this is a smaller case, but we see it in the town that I live in, Northampton. More than half the children reported missing in Northamptonshire during a 12-month period were living in care. So we can see that it's not just an issue with care homes, but the broader system here of the broader care system, which the government are doing an inquiry on. Let's see what the results of that are going to be. But the fact remains that these companies are making tons of money from this situation. These private companies are making tons of money, 20% profit off of income. I think that's 20% of their investment they're making as profit, which is a lot of money, talking hundreds of millions of pounds in profits. It's just not on. It's not on. It's not a fair system. That money should be going to children, but instead it's going to some rich person's bank account. So, I don't know what more to say apart from let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.